welcome to this flipped preaching video. As we've moved through Advent, we've been asking the question, where will God be born? The verses we're looking at this week come from Luke chapter 1 verses 39 to 45, and this is a conversation between Mary, Jesus' mother, and Elizabeth, John the Baptist's mother. Luke's gospel, as we've already pointed out in a number of places, does different things to the other gospel writers. And one of the things he does particularly well is he brings a focus on the women that surround Jesus, those that journey with him in different ways. And we have these bookends that occur in his gospel. Here in this chapter 1, we have Mary and Elizabeth, which, if we're honest, are the two most with it and progressive characters. You know, these people grasp it in this story. And then if we go to chapter 23 and 24, the very end of chapter 23, beginning of 24, we have the women who go to the tomb, and they're the ones that meet Jesus as he's resurrected, and they're the ones that go and tell the disciples the good news of what is happening. So, you know, Luke has these women, no men around, just these women who are there at the very beginning. You know, as Jesus is conceived, as John the Baptist is there, they are there speaking of what God is doing. And then at the very end, they're there as they meet Jesus from the tomb, and as they run and they go and they tell of the good things that God is doing and that Jesus is alive. So Luke has this, and he has it throughout in other places as well, these women who speak and show us something different, although we've not always had our eyes open to see that. They have this conversation, and as Mary walks into the house, Elizabeth senses John in her womb doing a liturgical dance of some description. You know, he kicks, and she senses that this is God's Spirit at work as she meets Mary, and she blesses her, a little bit like the Beatitudes. You know, she says, "Blessed be this woman, blessed be the child that you carry." You know, who am I to have received you into my house? You know, blessed be God for what he is doing in this place. Elizabeth gets it straight away. Unlike her husband Zechariah, if you read the story a bit earlier on, when the angel turns up to him and says, "This is what's going to happen," he goes, "How do I know this is true? You know, what sign are you going to give me?" And Gabriel deals with that one by shutting him up for 9 months and saying, "You're not going to speak again until this child is born." We don't hear anything from Joseph, but we have Mary when she receives the news from the angel Gabriel. And so we have these women who grasp what God is doing. Now, the verses that follow these ones that we have are called the Magnificat, Mary's song, and she speaks this profound prophetic word about what God is doing with her and her place within that, but what God is doing in the world, what his kingdom is about. She talks about the hungry being fed, those that are rich and powerful being brought low, those who are humble being lifted up. Now, she senses that this is a moment where God is beginning to rewrite the order of the world as she sees it and as she senses it. So often in the Christmas story, Mary is portrayed as meek and mild, almost passive, allowing everything to happen to her. And yet the Mary that we see here, and the Elizabeth as well, is not weak, passive women that are just a bit part in this story. Actually, they're completely the opposite. These are two women who are strong, who have a sense of their importance in God's plan, in what God is doing with them. They sense actually the significance of what is going on as they carry John the Baptist and Jesus, as they nurture them. These are two women that know what God is doing, and they've grasped that. And Mary brings these prophetic words in the Magnificat, and she continues to journey with Jesus. She continues to take part in this adventure that God has brought her on, and she is far from passive, far from meek and mild. In fact, she's very hands-on, she's very active. She ponders all of the things that happen, she stores them in her heart, as it says, and she's right there throughout Jesus' journey. Not always quite understanding what's going on, but she is there. So I hope you've enjoyed this short video. Some of you will get to hear more about it if you're with us at our 9 o'clock communion service, but others are going to enjoy the nativity instead. But I hope whatever happens during this week, you work with this story, allow God to speak to you in this story, to open your eyes afresh to it and see what he's doing, and maybe challenge yourself to read some of the other women in Jesus' life and see what they're doing and the radical way that God uses them. This is a story for each of us that reminds us that God is at work in this world in ways that sometimes we don't see, that sometimes those voices about turning things upside down come from what might seem like unusual places. But let's hope, like Mary, we can grasp that which God is doing right here and right now, and that we can be those people that speak the prophetic word, that change and transform our communities because we see that God is wanting to do a new thing in these places. I hope you have a good Christmas, and we'll be back in the new year with more Preaching. So I hope you've enjoyed this series, and we will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.